Alright, hey guys. What I want to show you guys today is how to install our Fisher Fab light. This is our ultra light, 3200 lumens, and we designed it to work with the Sur Ron to be plug and play, so you've got the factory style connector. And I'll show you guys how you get into the connectors and which wire you need to disconnect and connect this in. So first thing I'm going to do is clamp this guy down to the bars, and I've already put the mounts onto the headlight just to make this a little bit quicker, but very basic. Just take this screw out, hold the clamp up there, put the screw back in, and you can just leave them kind of loose so that you can adjust them around. And same thing with these. This is a two-piece mount system, so it's just a screw that goes through with a nut and then an interlocking mechanism at the other side. And go ahead and set the light over the top. And I'm actually just using the factory light, which is still on there, to kind of hold the light for me while I do this. And I'm just going to get this piece locked in on both sides. And if you're having trouble getting this piece locked in, just loosen the nut. Make sure you can have it engaged on the bolts a little bit, but don't have it so tight that you can't get enough travel out of this piece to get it in there. And slide it over a little bit. Get it centered on the bars. Okay. One thing that helps when you're doing this, let me give you guys a better look at that. The threads are very fine on these bolts. Hopefully you guys can see that. But sometimes the aluminum from the mount will get into the threads and cause the nut to try and cross or seize. So if you can pinch this together before you tighten the nut, see now I've got some thread exposed down there. Go ahead and pinch those together by hand first before you tighten it down, and that way it's not trying to pull the screw through the aluminum, getting aluminum into the threads like that. Alright, so get this tightened. Okay. And you don't need to go crazy on it. It's going to hold. These clamps work very well. And the Sur Ron, if you've got the stock Sur Ron bars, they're actually a little bit oversized, so the clamps have no problem holding the light in place. And then once those are tight, if you need to adjust the light, you can leave these a little bit loose, move it up and down, wherever you want it. But for right now, we're just going to get to showing you how to get that connector plugged in. So, just going to loom this here. And normally we'd be taking this stock light off, but I'm not going to bother with that right now because I actually want to do a little demo video of stock light versus our light. So we're going to take this cover off, and it's just these two screws right here. Come out of there. Try not to drop the screw where you can't get it. And then when you take this cover off, this ignition sticks down in here. So you gotta kind of finagle it out of there. And once you get it out, you'll see that there is, get you a closer look. You look down in there, and you want to kind of pay attention to how it's stuffed up into the frame, because that makes room for this ignition to fit in there. So if you don't get it tucked back in there, you're going to have a hard time putting this back into place. And they're almost always stuffed up in there. So get this guy out. And as you can see, I've already disconnected the brake levers, so that's what those two empty connectors are in there. And then there are a couple of looms, these guys. We're just going to take those off so that we can put our headlight wire through the loom. And you want to follow the wire from the factory light so that you know that you're getting the right wire, because there's quite a few of them that have a 2-pin connector that are the same as the headlight, but only one of them will actually work. So here we go. We're gonna get this guy and just push down on this tab, pull it apart, follow your wire from the ultralight, bring it in through here, plug it in, and before you put all this together, you can test to make sure your light works. Oh, except for you have to have the key on because it needs power. So turn your key on first and then test your power. Make sure your light works and you know you're plugged into the right place. And then you want to put all this stuff back in there. Before you put it all back in, you can use this little cable tie to tidy up the wires again. And then carefully put all your connectors and the bundle back in there. Pull this guy back over them. Get everything tucked up in there. And depending on what bars you've got, like on a factory bar, there's a little extra cable, so you can just kind of loom that in, or wrap it around up in here and tuck it in. You just want to be careful that when you put that plate back on that holds the ignition, that you're not pinching any of these wires, because this is a pinch point. You can see even from the factory some of these wires get a little pinched by that guy. So pay attention to that, make sure you're not pinching anything. And then we're going to put this back in here, feed these wires back in. And I'm already seeing that the bundle is kind of blocking the ignition switch. So try and make sure you get those wires out of the way. Don't force it, just finesse it. You have to do a little wiggling. Should be able to get it in there to where it doesn't feel like you're compressing anything as it goes down. Should sit nicely. So if it's not doing that, make sure these wires are not in the way. And I can see this one wire is getting a little tangled. And should go right about there. Okay? And then when you go to put these screws back in, just do one at a time. Don't tighten it down all the way before you start the other one. Just get it started. Because I have seen that on some of these Sur Rons, the bolt holes don't line up very nicely, and so they want to cross thread. So you want to make sure you get both of these started easily before you tighten them down. Okay. And then you can check your wires before you snug that thing all the way down. Make sure they can wiggle around in there. Make sure they can move so they're not getting pinched. And then just snug these guys down. And then you're done with that. And at this point you could adjust where you want your light to go, and then you're all done. And that's all there is to it. So we tried to make it as plug and play as possible. Hopefully that helps you guys. And if you have any other questions or need any other info about the light, leave us a comment and we'll get back to you. Thanks, guys.